There is a very good reason why fans of anime fanservice games are not choosing Sony's PlayStation as their platform of choice for their games. Ever since Sony's gaming division moved to the West, since their exclusives are more popular there, Sony has caused quite a lot of problem for the Japanese game developers because they have to follow their own arbitrary guidelines to make it less offensive for the crowds who are more sensitive towards gender politics issues. What we found out later on was that the games were actually decided on a case-by-case basis. It doesn't actually follow any sort of global standards because they're not yet implemented. They instead have to rely on the executives to check the content of the game and make sure that they comply with the policies. Although it is quite an exaggeration when they say that the cases were extraordinarily rare when we're seeing censorship happening almost every month at this point. Since their policies have less consistency than an actual politician, we're not really sure if your anime fanservice games are gonna be hits, such as Persona 5 Royal. But Atlus has tons of money, so they probably got a free pass on showing girls' thighs. Thanks to this arbitrary and vague rulings and regulations, a lot of games on the PS4 are censored for really mild and inane reasons. At least mild and inane to those who are already familiar to anime, which unfortunately not a lot of people on Sony's gaming division are, and since they're not the fans of these sorts of games, they don't understand what makes these games appealing, which is why they end up censoring the game so much that they appeal to an entirely different demographic that doesn't buy their game. It's like trying to please someone who likes chocolate ice cream by smearing a vanilla ice cream with crap. This is in contrast to the guys at Nintendo who might as well take over Japan at this point. The Nintendo Switch is becoming the house of fan service games such as Nekopara, Galgun 2, Senran Kagura Reflections, and everyone's personal favorite, Panty Party. Yes, that is an actual game on the Nintendo Switch. This is why it's constantly brought up and encouraged that consumers and developers of these sorts of games to make the Switch, and also go to the PC, as these two platforms provide immense benefits for these type of games. The PC is not only incredibly versatile and customizable, but a lot of these anime games don't need a powerful PC to run. Even a laptop with a good Nvidia or Radeon RX GPUs can run these games just fine. Not only that, but there's also modding support, which allows you to enhance your experiences with additional user-generated content. The Switch might not be the most powerful console in this generation, but it wins in terms of portability, and they're powerful enough to run these anime games. And while the games are still censored, they're not censored to the same extent as the PS4 version. It toes the line between not really nudity, but enough for it to be embarrassing for you to cover the screen. So it should be plainly obvious for the fans of fanservice anime games and the best platform of choice for their type of games, and also obvious for the developers in where they should put their games. But unfortunately, some developers are still not informed about these recent changes. Some players are still holding that PS4 and believing that that's where the good weeb game's at, and some game developers are still insisting to develop games on that PS4. But this is not a good decision for either of them. Take for example, the recent censorship Hooplas. The box art for the enhanced edition of Blade Arcus from Shining has the thighs cropped into the box art. Some of you might say that it's thanks to the PS4 box's aspect ratio, but you can just do a quick edit to make the thighs visible like this. Takes like 2 minutes. This can either be an editing mistake or a deliberate act of censorship. I'm more convinced that it's the latter, and here's why. There's another box art from Atelier Lulua where the Western PS4 version has the thighs cropped once again. The interesting thing here is that the Japanese version of that box art has more than just thighs. They also have the horse removed, which is really weird. And finally, there's the box art for SNK 40th Anniversary where it's pretty obvious in what they censored. But that's not really the kicker here though. Remember Omega Labyrinth Z, the game that didn't even get a Western release? Well, their next game, Omega Labyrinth Life, has some additional modifications so that it can cater to the global standards. The Nintendo Switch version has pretty much the full content. You got the Omega, and also you got the lewd content. The PS4 version doesn't have the Omega, and the lewd content is toned down to a more family-friendly experience. Both versions will run at 60 FPS anyway, at a reasonable resolution, so there's no point in getting the PS4 version for that extra performance. A lot of these things sound so minor and insignificant, and you are correct. I mean, they're just mysterious censorship god rays, they're just thighs and bikinis on the box art, they're just a change of name and logo and heavier censorship so that it's more safer. Okay, maybe not that one, but that's not the point here. The point is the principle. It's the reasoning and why these minor or even major things should be different on each versions of the game. And concerning the Omega Labyrinth game, we're not even talking the Western version here. here. We're talking about the Japanese version of the game. I can't even argue about this as a detriment for those who want a more safe-for-work version of the game. Why should we get an entirely different platform for the safe-for-work version? Why can't the Switch version have the option to tone it down? Why can't both versions exist in both consoles to please both audiences? Generally, the game should always give the essential experience on each versions, but thanks to some arbitrary rules, they have to be different. But why? Why does the PS4 version need to be different? If it's to meet global standards, why is the Switch version isn't afraid to take that risk? Why would Sony shoot themselves in the foot by changing something so minor and making an inferior version of the product? I suppose since Sony is already a successful company and they're focusing more on the Western market, they didn't realize that what they're doing is hurting so much of the other market. It's something that other developers noted too, such as Marvelous, the devs of Senran Kagura. They noted potentially lower sales forecasts thanks to the reduction of sexual content in their games when they were talking about delaying Rune Factory 5. And if you guys missed it, the producer of Senran Kagura left Marvelous thanks to the growing restrictions of sexual content, although he is still the producer of the franchise. So once again, the decision is quite obvious for those who want fan service content in their games, and for those who are developing fan service content in their games. Go for the Switch and or the PC. Stay away from the PlayStation. Even the mobile market is offering better waifus, and if you have to go to the mobile market for gacha waifus, hey, I'm not judging, just don't blame me when you buy too much. You ain't got some money for burgers or something.